I've been waiting for something like this to come along for a while. This is the Multimedia Visual Performer, or the MVP for short, by a company called Forecast. And with this standalone device right here, you can send MIDI messages into this, and it will output video and DMX lighting cues. So you can sync your video and your lighting to live performances. And once you program and input all of your video and lighting cues into this standalone device, this is all you need in order to trigger those videos and lighting cues. So you can either use no laptop or computer and just send MIDI messages into this device if you want that, or what you can do is you can use your laptop and take some of the load off of your laptop and have this device handle all of the video and lighting cues. And when I say DMX lighting, I don't mean just like a MIDI to DMX converter, which I've reviewed on this channel before. I mean, you send a MIDI message to this and it will trigger an entire lighting scene that you've recorded onto this device. With my original music, I sync up lighting and video, so this is huge for me. This is a really cool product. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to set it up, show you how it works, and see if this is something that's right for you. I bought this with my own money. I've been waiting for this to come out for a while. I got to see it at NAMM 2024, and I know they're actually going to be there at NAMM 2025, so be sure to check out their booth if you do end up going to NAMM. I know that I'll be there. And the people at Forecast were kind enough to offer a $50 off coupon if you use promo code SCOTTUHLMUSIC at checkout. So if you do decide that this product is right for you, don't forget to use promo code SCOTTUHLMUSIC at checkout to save $50 on your order. So before we start, the video programming of this device is actually pretty easy and straightforward. It makes a lot of sense and should be pretty easy to follow along with. The lighting gets a little bit more complicated, so I'm going to try to break this down as easily as I can and give you step-by-step instructions. However, if you know nothing about MIDI programming or just the basics of DMX programming, you are going to have to watch my beginner's guide on MIDI programming and or my beginner's guide on DMX programming. I'll leave links down below in the description. You'll be able to see what this product can do, but it's going to be a little bit confusing if you don't understand that. That's enough of the intro. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and let's go ahead and get started. So it does come in this nice case, and no, the tape I put on there myself. And they do give you two different cables, USB-C to USB-C, as well as a USB-C to USB-A, which will come in handy here in a minute. You do get a power supply, and then you get the MVP itself. You're going to notice how insanely lightweight this is. It weighs basically nothing. But you have some of your connections up here. Starting from left to right, you do have a spot to plug in power, although you can also power this via the USB-C host port, which I'll show you here later. MIDI in for sending MIDI messages into the MVP if you want to do that over 5-pin. This Ethernet port right here will be for sending the DMX data into the MVP, but it'll also be for outputting DMX data via Artnet. I'll show you that as well. HDMI out for connecting to a video wall or projector or whatever you're sending your visuals to. USB-C host port will power the device and also is used to connect it to your computer. You have two USB-A ports here, and these are for connecting MIDI devices, so you can send MIDI in either by these ports or by the 5-pin MIDI port. Then you have these in and out ports, which is for LTC, which I'm not actually going to go over in this video because I heard about that for the first time with this product. So plug into the host port via USB-C and connect it to your computer. You can see a light turns on up here. Once it gets to this screen, it's ready to go. Once it's connected to your computer, you want to go open a browser and go to mvp.local. And you should be able to get to this screen, and this is how you're going to start configuring stuff. So we're going to do the video stuff first because I think it's the easiest to do. You can see over here on the left, we have video, lighting, and LTC. Just make sure you're on video. And they make this pretty simple. Go over here and click edit mode. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to drag and drop some of the videos into the MVP. So here's a couple of full music videos that I did for my band. I'll link to them down below if you want to check them out. Shameless plug. And then here's just a couple of clips that I use that I'm going to use as a demo for this video. And then you're going to see these arrows right here. These are going to upload them into the MVP. You're just going to do that on all the clips that you want to upload. Once that's done, you should see all of your unassigned videos over here on the right. So what we're going to do is we're going to start assigning them. Now, the first thing that's important to notice is that note 0 or MIDI note C-2 is always going to be assigned to blackout. That one's assigned by default, but all these other ones you get to import a video clip. So for C#-2, I'm going to click this down arrow and I'm going to drop in the augmented video. And you can see that that is now removed from the unassigned video list over here. D-2, I'm going to drop in backfire. D#-2, I'm going to drop in Ocean. E-2, I'm going to drop in the Sphere Storm music video, and so on and so forth. You also can search as well. So if you have a lot of clips, that makes it nice and easy. So I'm just going to put the rest of these in. And now I have imported all of my clips from note 1 or C#-2 all the way up to note 12, which is C-1. And one more thing to note is that over here, you can set it so what do you want the videos to do after they finish playing through? Do you want them to loop? Do you want them to freeze? Or do you want them to go black? I'm going to have it on loop personally. When you're done with that, untoggle edit mode, and that's basically it. Your videos are imported, you're ready to control them with MIDI. To confirm this, you do have to power cycle the MVP, so unplug it and then plug it back in, and it's all saved. Pretty simple. So here's a demo on how easy this is to control now. I have my MIDI controller right here. This is the Luminite Graviton M2. I have a video on this MIDI controller. I love this MIDI controller. It's very well designed, but I have that connected out of the USB-C port of the MIDI controller into the USB-A slot on the MVP. And I also have just this tiny screen right here connected via HDMI to the MVP. Obviously, you're going to want to do this on a bigger scale with a projector or a video wall or something like that. But for a YouTube video, I think it makes the most sense. So if you remember how I imported the clips, note 0 or C-2 is blackout, note 1, which is C#-2 is the augmented video, so on and so forth. That's what I've programmed on my MIDI controller to send those commands when I hit these buttons. So when I push this one, it's going to load the augmented video, and it loads up. I want to load the ocean video, click this one, the ocean video plays. Click this one, the stars go. Click this, and it's the lightning, or whatever I called it. Next one is the space tunnel. Click this one, the Sphere Storm music video plays. Every single MIDI command that I am sending is loading the proper video that I assigned. You could use a foot controller like this Luminite, or you could use something like this Sonido Tempo Pad, which is another MIDI product that I've reviewed. Whatever MIDI you want to send to the MVP, you can use it and trigger video clips. Very, very simple. So if you remember, the helix is assigned to note 10, which is A#-2. Let's say I want to go in here, and this is what I like about this controller. I can change that to now send note 11. I can push this play button to test it, and now it's sending this little clip of like the waves. Set it to 12, and now it loads the typewriter. And if I go to 13, there's not actually anything loaded in 13. That is about as easy as it gets. MIDI out from my controller, MIDI into the MVP, and it loads video clips. It doesn't get simpler than that. Of course, you can also use a DAW like Ableton or Logic or something like that to send MIDI commands to the MVP. So I have the MVP connected via USB-C to my computer, and I'm going to demo this in Ableton. If you do need help setting up Ableton for running your backing tracks, I do have a video going over that. But I'm going to go to my settings, and under link tempo and MIDI, I just am going to make sure that the output ports for the MVP, that track is enabled. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So here's a MIDI channel that I have right here. This is where I'm going to put all of my commands for routing to the MVP. I'm going to set my MIDI in to no input because I only want to send MIDI out. And then on MIDI out, I want to make sure that I assign that to the MVP. And I'm going to make sure that it's set to output on MIDI channel 1 because MIDI channel 1 is what the MVP reads MIDI commands for launching video clips. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding in some MIDI data into a clip right here. Again, this is the way that you do it in Ableton. This isn't a video on Ableton. Whatever DAW you are comfortable using, you can route MIDI notes to your MVP on MIDI channel 1. But in Ableton, I'm going to go ahead and draw in some MIDI notes. Right here on this first downbeat, I'm going to send C#-2. Next beat, D-2, and so on and so forth. I'm going to send all of these MIDI commands pretty much on every beat. So I have the MVP connected to my computer, which is running Ableton, and the MVP is connected to my projector via HDMI. You can see it loads each of the clips as it passes each of those MIDI notes. This is such an easy way to load clips via MIDI. So for video stuff, that's about as simple as it gets. Loading your video clips, assign them to a MIDI note, send those MIDI note commands on MIDI channel 1, and you can play your clips. It's very straightforward, and I love the simplicity of that. Now, when we get to the DMX Lighting programming, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. And it makes sense because the MVP is actually going to store full scenes and data of lighting programming. It's not just a MIDI to DMX converter. It saves actual scenes and cues and everything that you want to trigger with these MIDI notes. So you have to record that data onto the MVP. And this is done via Artnet. And if you're not familiar with Artnet, it can be intimidating, but it's actually pretty straightforward if you're just coming from like DMX world. Artnet's actually pretty simple. I'm going to explain how to set that up. So in order to do this, you're going to need two extra things. First, you're going to need some sort of Ethernet network switcher or something like that. I found this one. This is like a 1 in, 4 out type of switcher. It's like 20 bucks on Amazon. I'll link to it down below. And the other thing that you're going to need is you're going to need an Artnet node. And you are going to need this to use it live with the MVP as well. So the one that I recommend is this one by PK Night or P Night. I'm not sure if it's like day, night, or night in shining armor, but this is actually the cheapest one. It's like $70 on Amazon, so it's not that bad at all. It is only for one universe, but if you know how to set up multiple universes, you probably already know how to set up Artnet anyways. So this is the one that I recommend, and I'll link to this down below as well. Shout out to the guy who told me about this at AES New York this year. I cannot remember your name. I actually bought this right after you told me about this, so whoever you are, thank you for the recommendation. This thing's working great. If you're watching the video, leave a comment down below. I'm very familiar with DMX programming, but Artnet was a whole new thing for me, and I was a little intimidated by it. But it's actually really simple. It's still DMX programming. You're just sending it over an Ethernet cable or a Cat5 cable on a network. So you just basically just have to set up a network that all of your devices talk to. And it's actually pretty simple. And this is done by setting the IP address and the subnet mask. So the IP address has 4 different sections of numbers separated by periods. The first 3 groups of those numbers represent the network, and then the 4th group of numbers represents the host. But what you think about is that the host represents all the devices connected to the network. That seems a little bit confusing, but all you have to know basically is that you have to make sure that every device connected to the network, the first 3 numbers in that group are all set the same, and then with the 4th group of numbers, each device needs to have its own number. So my computer, the MVP, and the Artnet node all need to be set to the same network number. Remember those first 3 groups? And then that 4th number, each one of them just needs to have a different number, like this. You can't have them set to the same number. They each have to have their own number. Now, this is only true if the subnet mask is set to 255.255.255.0. You can change the subnet mask around and configure the network settings differently, but for this video and most people's needs, this will make sense. So that's how you're going to set it up, and if that doesn't make sense, just follow along, and I think it will make sense. Like I said, I was a little intimidated by this, but it's actually pretty simple once you understand it. So you will need to connect via Ethernet into your computer. I have been doing this with this USB-C to Ethernet adapter, and I will link to those down below in the description just in case if you need one if your computer doesn't have an Ethernet port. So here's how you connect them. This is that MIDI network switch. It says splitter, but I believe it has to be a network switch in order for this to work, but this one has been working for me. So this one is what's plugged into my computer, and I'm going to use 2 smaller Cat5 cables. One of them is going to go into my Artnet node, and the other one is going to go into the MVP. What's nice about all 3 of these devices is that all 3 of them can be powered with USB-C. Kind of will make it a little bit messy, but just go with it, it will work. So going back to mvp.local, you can see right here it says MVP Artnet settings. This is the IP address, and this is the subnet mask. So I need to set all of my other devices to the same IP address, except the last few digits have to be different, and the same subnet mask. You can go in there and change these settings. Go to your settings up here and click Artnet. You might see that you need to check your Ethernet connection, so that's what I'm actually going to show you here first. I think this makes the most sense. Whatever your MVP is set to, yours is very likely going to be different than this, but the idea is still the same. So I need to configure my computer to connect to this network. On the Mac, you go to your settings, and then go to network. And then the port that I have it plugged into is this one right here. This is the name of that adapter that I'm using to plug into my Mac Studio. So you're going to click that, and you can see that the IP address is not set anywhere close to what it needs to be. So I'm going to click Details. I'm going to click over here to TCP IP. I'm going to change this to manually. I want to manually put this in here. So I'm going to set this to 2.0.0. And then it can be just something that's not 111. So I'm going to set it to 113. And I'm also going to make sure that my subnet mask is set the same as well, 255.255.255.0. I'm going to hit OK. Now you can see that it actually says that it's connected. Now when I go into my MVP Artnet settings, you can see that it brings this up, and I can change the settings on here as well if I want to, but I'm just going to leave that as it is. Now on my Artnet node, I'm going to set it to the same thing. So local IP, I've set this to 2.0.0.112. Remember, those last digits have to be different on each device connected to the network. So that one's saved. Subnet mask is set to 255.255.255.0. That is correct. I'm also going to go over and make sure there's this setting right here, Artnet to DMX. That's what I want. You can actually reverse that and have this be DMX to Artnet. This is a bi-directional Artnet controller, which is pretty cool. But you want to make sure it's set Artnet to DMX. So now all three of my devices are set to the correct network, my computer, the MVP, and the Artnet node. And now we can start sending DMX scenes to the MVP for recording. Told you this one's going to be a little bit more complicated. Okay, so I'm going to be demoing this in LightKey. It's a lighting software that I've been messing around with. It's all right. I'm curious what you guys are using for your lighting software. Let me know. I'm definitely looking for a different one, but it gets the job done. This isn't a video on LightKey, but I am just going to show you that I currently have this outputting to that PK-Night Artnet node, which is the CR011R. But whatever lighting software you're using, LightKey, Resolume, whatever, you just have to make sure that you're outputting to your Artnet node. For this demo, I'm just going to do these 4 bars right here. Don't worry about those par cans that I have at the bottom. But you can see I have a couple of different washes. So I have a red wash, I also have a green wash, and I have a light blue wash as well. I also have a few chases. So you can see here's a pink chase. There's also kind of just a rainbow chase where the lights kind of just randomly change colors. I also have a strobe as well. This is just for the demo of the video. You can obviously do this on a much bigger scale. So now on the MVP, I'm going to make sure that I'm in lighting mode over here on the left. The screen looks very similar to video mode, and the idea is going to be very similar. But I have to record these DMX clips into the MVP. So I'm going to turn on edit mode over here. And I'm going to click this record new clip. Now this is important. You should see this Artnet preview right here. If you don't see this, that means something's not connected properly. And check your network settings. But you can see when I load different scenes, you can see that the Artnet preview is changing. That's what you want to see. That means that everything is connected properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this clip red wash. And I'm going to click start recording. The thing that's smart about the MVP is it doesn't just start recording right away. It waits until it sees DMX data and then starts to record. So right now it's getting nothing, but as soon as I click this red one, you can see all this info was saved via Artnet, and I can hit stop recording. It has saved all that red wash settings into the MVP. And you can see that it has saved red wash right here. Let's record another clip. This is going to be the green wash. Hit record. Load the green wash. All of that Artnet data is now recorded onto the MVP. Hit stop recording. Do the same thing for the light blue wash. I think you get the idea. Now, I have a couple of chases in here. So these are going to be a little bit longer. So this one's pink chase. I'm going to start recording this. And what you want to do is you want to let it run as many times as you want it to run when you're performing live, because there's not actually a way to loop the DMX signal as of right now. If you want it to continuously go, let it record for longer. For the washes, it doesn't really matter. But for a chase or something like that, you want it to record as long as you need it to be. So stop recording. It saved that. I'm going to do the same thing on this rainbow chase. Let it play as long as I want it to, or how many times I want it to, and then hit stop recording. And the same thing for this strobe effect that I have right here. Record a new clip, call it strobe, and record it. So now, just in the same way we did with video, I'm going to start assigning these. For C#-2, I'm going to assign that to red wash, D-2 to green wash, next one to light blue wash, next one to pink chase, next one to rainbow chase, and the last one to strobe. Same exact idea as we did with the video stuff. Remember, all the lighting commands are going to read on MIDI channel 3. That's what's different from video. Video is on MIDI channel 1, lighting is on MIDI channel 3. Now that's saved, uncheck edit mode, and then power cycle it, and all of that data will be saved to the MVP. All right, promise we're almost done here. So we don't need this relay switcher anymore, or splitter, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to get rid of that. And instead, what I'm going to do is connect the Ethernet of the MVP into the Ethernet of my Artnet node. Because now the MVP is going to send all of that data that we just recorded, and it's going to send it to this Artnet node here. I have been using these wireless Chave DMX dongles. They've been pretty helpful, and I'll link to those down below if you want to check them out. I've definitely liked them. But now I have the receivers all connected to my 4 light bars. So I'm going to do this with the MIDI foot controller, but of course you can also do this in Ableton or other software as well, like we did earlier in the video. You can see when I load this preset, which I have programmed to send C# -2 on MIDI channel 3, it will load the red wash. When I click this one, which was set to D-2 or note 2 on MIDI channel 3, it will load the green wash. This one will load the blue. This one is going to load the pink chase. This one will load the rainbow chase. And then this one right here will load the strobe. And then this one over here will load the blackout. I do want you to pay attention. So when I load the pink chase, remember what I said about how it records just as long as I send that DMX data? So you'll see what happens is when whatever was recorded stops, it does not loop. It just stops where the lights are currently set at. I do wish that there was a way to loop. I did reach out to Forecast and they did say that this is something they are planning. As of the time of this video, it doesn't look like that's an option. So just something to keep in mind. If you're triggering a wash, like the green wash, doesn't really matter. The lights are going to be static anyways. But if you do any sort of chase, you want to make sure you record enough of that MIDI data, especially if you're going to be triggering it with a foot controller or a MIDI controller like this. If you're doing it in Ableton or something like that, you could obviously just send another MIDI message to re-trigger that loop. It's not as tough. And also just FYI, you can see the corresponding numbers when I send different MIDI commands to the MVP. You can see that represented here on the video as well as the lights. So some frequently asked questions I'm sure I'm going to get. Yes, you can output video and DMX lighting from this single device. You just send your MIDI commands on MIDI channel 1 for video triggering, and then you send MIDI commands on MIDI channel 3 to trigger the DMX lighting. But you can do both at the same time from this one device. As of right now, there is not a way to add more storage to this device. I know that they've said that they've considered working on, more of a pro model with multiple HDMI outputs and more storage and stuff like that. This is kind of like the first version, and I think it'll be good for what most people need. Some potential fixes or updates I'd love to see in the future. One, having DMX scenes loop. I would love that for sure. And I did reach out to them and they said that they should be working on that, so hopefully that comes out soon. Right now it's set that video is triggered on MIDI channel 1 and lighting is triggered on MIDI channel 3. I'd love to assign those, like say that I want video to be on MIDI channel 5 and then lighting on channel 6, especially for video since it hogs MIDI channel 1. That can be a little tricky, especially if you're trying to control other MIDI devices and if another device has to read on MIDI channel 1, for example. I do have videos on some MIDI routing and splitting and stuff like that. If you do need a workaround for that, that's an option for you. And then something interesting is that I was powering this device with USB-C. It wasn't plugged into my computer, it was just plugged in with USB-C. And then I tried going into USB-A with my MIDI controller, that Luminite MIDI controller, and I couldn't get it to send messages with that. I either had to switch over to MIDI 5-pin in, or I had to power the MVP with that power supply. So if you run into that issue, that might be the fix. I don't know if that's the MVP or my MIDI controller, but just that's the workaround. But overall, this is such a cool device. Like I said, I've waited for something like this to come out for a while. My original music is called Spiral Cell, and I have synced up video and lighting for that show, so this is really cool. I have been programming the live show for the album that I just released. It's a pretty complicated show, so it's taken a little while to program, and I really wanted to see if I could program it without a computer, and I wanted to do it standalone. I'm starting to realize that I think Ableton might be the best way to do it because it's live looping, and looping in Ableton just makes things so much easier. I'm still figuring it out, but the thing that I love is that either way, if I do it with no computer, this device can handle my lighting and video. If I do it with the computer running Ableton, I can take the load off of Ableton with all the plugins and all the stuff that I have in Ableton, and then this device can handle the video and the lighting and not crash my computer with how much stuff that I have running on my computer. Really, really cool that you can use it in either way. I'm a huge fan of it. I love it. I'm going to keep using it. And if you've decided that this is something that is right for you and your needs, don't forget to use promo code SCOTTUHLMUSIC at checkout to get $50 off of your order. If you found this video helpful, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. It's a free way to support the channel. These videos take a long time to put together. Hitting the thumbs up button feeds the YouTube algorithm gods and recommends the video to more people, so I would appreciate it. 2 other videos I want to check out. Be sure to check out my video on the Quasar Science Double Rainbow 100 lights. Those are some of my favorite lights. I love these lights. And also something that I think pairs really well with this is the B-Beat. It's a standalone device that is capable of doing backing tracks, MIDI, and video, but it doesn't have a way to do lighting. It has a way to output MIDI, but not DMX lighting. So I actually think that these two pair really well together. So you can check out both those videos by clicking the links on your screen now. Thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to follow me on my social media profiles. I'll have links down below in the description. If you have any other cool gear you want me to check out, leave a comment down below. Thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.